the entire state legislature then guilty of a crime? If we don't write the...
It only will get worse. And it certainly flies in the face of our constitutional framework that we have three independent co-equal branches that are supposed to act as checks and balances on each other.
And they're not. The legislature just legalized what the judicial branch in this state, in this county of Los Angeles, did. That was illegal. So my question is, isn't the entire state legislature then guilty of a crime? They basically
I
wouldn't say
the entire one, because there were a few votes.
There were a few no votes.
A few, no, very few.
Did
but I believe he did sign it.
He signed it.
Yeah.
So they made an illegal law, which the U.S. Supreme Court should certainly overturn, if anybody can get it that far.
Well, if it can get up there. But several times we see that government, instead of being independent, these branches, they come in and protect each other. They circle the wagons.
So which brings me to Michael WARNKEN's lawsuit in the 9th District again. His lawsuit says we must expand the state assembly, that it's simply too few members to represent 38 million people.
Yeah, Michael has identified one of our core problems.
Ask you the same question, and you said?
I went back to one point. They made the point that the 14th Amendment, it was kind of funny. They said that we're all basically equally, I want to say shafted. All of us, since we are all equally damaged by these districts being so bad. And I said, well, that's not what I'm arguing here. I said that I sent 14 petitions in, and I didn't hear anything back. And I even made the point that, well, you guys have a robotic pen. And you've got these prefab statements, these prefabbed, well, we don't happen to agree with you, but we appreciate you for being part of the process. And they'll have the pen sign it, and they'll send it to you. Well, I didn't even get that. And I said, this is an equal issue of equal protection in that issue, that I'm not getting access and somebody else is. And I said in court, I said the only way that equal opportunity is defeated is if the assembly did nothing for nobody. And I said, even my opponents aren't arguing that. And I said that in the end, ultimately, if it is the case that the 14th Amendment somehow can't apply here, I cited out, I said it may ultimately, my case may rest on the 9th Amendment, the political rights of the citizens. And I cited the case United Postal Workers versus Mitchell, and I said, ultimately, we have a reasonable expectation for a rational level of representation, and one representative for every 475,000 is not.
This country was founded because we had taxation without representation, that the king could do whatever he wanted and did wrong to us and did a lot of it, and we had no voice in it. Well, this country was founded on liberty and freedom, and that we have a representative republic. And I believe it was Washington that said, you know, when you have one representative to 300,000 or 30,000 people, you have liberty. And when you start to approach 40,000, you start to have tyranny because you no longer have representation. Here in California, we have 40 members in the state senate and 80 in the assembly, and that was fixed back in, I believe, 1854, and we had maybe around 300,000 people in the state. We still have those ratios, 40 state senators, 80 assembly members, and now, as you said, we're 38 million people. So that's one assembly person for every 500,000 people. So that's certainly not representation. And the other thing that's critical is we used to have more representatives than judges, and now we have more judges than representatives.
Which is part of his brief. That's
correct.
Part of his argument.
And so the whole balance of our system in those ratios where proper representation occurs, which means that problems then are properly getting addressed and solved, and our whole government and our liberty works a lot better. In fact, these things do not get addressed, and then they all end up over in the courts, and what happens is our judiciary was placed third in the Constitution for a reason. They were the least powerful, but yet they've leapfrogged over the other two branches and become the most powerful because everything ends up in court today.
Correct.
And then when these judges have immunity, that's a real problem because they can make a lot of unfounded and maybe corrupt decisions. Let me go back to that paper by John Wolfgram, how the judiciary stole the...
Before you go there, before you go back to the paper by John Wolfgram, should people look at CaliforniaCommonwealth.com and sign on as a joiner?
Yeah, they should take a look at that. That's Michael WARNKEN's website, and see his papers there. he comes up with one benchmark after another as to why this representation in California is woefully, if not totally, inadequate. Another point he brings up is like these assembly members, again, there's only 80. Some of them sit on 10, 15 different committees, and they're wearing so many different hats. How is you as a citizen going to get contact, get access, and get representation from these state senators and assembly members? You're not.
So what number would you recommend if you could whisper, shh, listen, federal judge, if you put it in his ear, what number should the state assembly be now?
Well, I go back to Washington, somewhere around 30,000.
So that would mean 1,200 state assemblymen, is what we should have right now in 2009.
Yeah, and I'm against, for the most part, larger government. This country was founded on a government of limited and express powers. But that's one thing that I think we should have. We always need to have more representatives than judges, because then we deal with these problems on the front end,
right,
instead of the problems on the back end. Another problem we're experiencing here right now in California is the federal judiciary has come in as an overseeing our state prison system because it's so improperly managed, and it's the point where it's almost totally uncivilized.